Welcome to the podcast, Teri. It's great to have you on. Do you mind giving us a quick rundown of your background and also what you guys are doing?
Sure. All right. So I'm Teri Thomas. I'm Chief Executive Officer of Volpara and Chief Business Officer of Lunit. And I am an American who lives in New Zealand. To give you a little bit of background of what the companies do and how I fit in with that, Volpara is on a mission to save families from cancer by providing AI that can improve the quality of a mammogram, as well as help people understand their risk of breast and other cancers. And then the addition of Lunit also does diagnostic AI, goes through and analyzes mammograms, but also analyzes digital pathology to be able to look at good treatment protocols for for those with breast cancer. So both companies very focused on cancer. My background, I grew up in health technology, working for 20 years at Epic, which is an electronic medical record vendor that's just killing it globally. And that particular company and that growth in health technology was helping grow what was a pretty small, unknown private company from, maybe 100 million revenue soaking wet to a multi-billion-dollar company that it is today. And then I ended up, because I love New Zealand and it's an amazing, beautiful place, moving to New Zealand to give a place for my boys to turn into wonderful, self-sufficient men who enjoy nature. So I am privileged to be able to divide my time between the United States and New Zealand. I spent some time at Orion Health, which is a nice technology company, homegrown in New Zealand as well, that provides interoperability and electronic medical record systems. And after working for Orion, I actually got my master's in nursing in New Zealand. And so I got in, took care of patients, did some COVID nursing, but I also did IT consulting on the side. And so through IT consulting, I started consulting for Volpara, helped Volpara with a successful acquisition of a company called CRA Health. And through that process, the founder of Volpara, Ralph Hinem, who was the former CEO, asked me, along with the board, to come in and become the CEO of Volpara. So I've now been CEO for 3 years. I've known Volpara for about 4.5 years.
Wow, amazing. That's a super interesting journey. So you're at Epic for about 20 years, just over
Yes.
that. And so I guess in that journey, how did that set you up for success and I guess coming into the CEO role at Volpara and then also your role at Lunit, which we'll talk about. I guess what were some of those lessons and experiences at Epic that I guess stood out for you?
Yeah, I would say probably the primary biggest lesson that I got was the importance of a deliberate culture. So cultivating a culture in which you care about profitability, you value your own time, you think about the return on the investment of everything that you do, because contrary to some companies, Epic has grown tremendously. The founder and CEO is on the Forbes billionaires list, and it was bootstrapped organic growth. And so as we were making business decisions, we were looking carefully at how it aligned with what the company existed for, which was improving the experience of patients and improving healthcare, and building a culture in which people are well aligned and know how to make good decisions even if somebody's not over their shoulder telling them what to do. That was probably the most important thing that I learned at Epic. And Epic has a peculiar mission. It's very simple. It's 6 words. It's do good, have fun, make money. And it's in that order, quite deliberately. So do good is improving healthcare, everything around the patient. We're really in wanting to move the needle and make a difference. And have fun. This is one that I originally thought wasn't that serious. And I've actually learned now, after leaving Epic, that there's incredible power to levity and creating a culture in which people want to show up, want to do their best, connect with the people around them, enjoy the people around them, and that there's nothing wrong with actually emphasizing lightness, encouraging people to joke around, even from an engagement with customer perspective, being the vendor the customers actually want to talk to, not being overly formal. There's something about professional can be quite boring, and Epic is not at all boring. But I realized when I went from a very colorful company that has wacky buildings, corporate slide, corporate tree house, trainers starting off every training session with jokes. Then I went into a couple different companies that didn't ever joke, and everything was kind of gray. And I realized, wow, I really miss those lighter things, but those lighter things actually get people through the rough times. So I incorporated that do good, have fun into my choices in my job and even how I lead. And then, of course, make money. We all know making money is important, especially if you're a public company. You've got a fiduciary duty to your shareholders, to be thinking about the return for them. But I think that strong discipline at Epic about thinking about what is the return on this. We're not relying on outside funders. We need to be careful. Simple things like spend money as if it's your own and you're good with money. Very, very basic, fundamental, but yet I see over and over when a company, for example, goes IPO and all of a sudden they've got a ton of money and they're like throwing wild parties and doing all this crazy stuff. And then all of a sudden they don't have a lot of money. What do we do? So that discipline of thinking about, am I leveraging this investment in the most effective way possible with a healthy dose of fun, a healthy dose of do good, but also thinking about where's the growth, where's the profit, and what does this mean in terms of a long-term healthy company? I'd say those are the biggest lessons I got from Epic.
Amazing, amazing. That's yeah. I mean, it's super important to have fun in what you're doing for the long term and staying in the game for as
Yes.
long as possible and enjoying it and getting the maximum output. So I guess in terms of that journey and the growth involved in that, what were some of those key, I guess, key experiences and lessons in terms of growing the organization that enabled that to happen essentially? So was there any strategies or anything that worked really well when it came to growth?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. When you grow from, say, 300 staff to 3,000 staff, you get tempted to put a lot of processes into place. Legal suddenly becomes much more influential because you're worried about risk. The level of finance and accounting, all of a sudden you want to have checks and balances on everything. And I think resisting that impulse of trying to systematize everything and making sure that you can still deliberately cultivate that startup kind of spirit, I think is incredibly important. So, like, I think about times, and this applies to my time at Epic, it also applies to times at Volpara as well, looking at the value of some informal, no more than the number of people you could feed with two pizzas, famous Amazon rule. Getting people in the room, maybe sitting on the floor or drawing on the wall. Ideally, if it's a dry erase wall, but regardless, making sure that you actually don't get ruled by fear and don't get ruled by complicated processes. Because every time, if you're in one of those continuously learning cultures, which I actually think is also a key to growth and success, you can overdo it and you can try to engineer every failure prevention into all of your go forward, and then all of a sudden you're heavy. All of a sudden you've got 45 sign-offs for every travel, and then people are like, I'm not going to go on a trip because that's way too complicated. Or, for us, we've got medical devices that are FDA approved, and so, we had a 50-page manual of steps that you needed to do for every software change. That disincentivizes people from innovation. So we actually rolled out a concept of as complicated as things need to be, but no more, and balancing out the safety. Like, you do need to engineer enough checks in that people don't do things that could end the company, but also allow people to have some freedom, some autonomy, some common sense, and be able to have some trust and faith that you put a strong enough culture in. For example, people spending money as if it's their own and they're good with money. That you actually allow a certain amount of freedom so that you've got, multiple sign-offs on big expenditures. You watch trends, but you give people some freedom in figuring out, okay, I can send this person to this place without a lot of paperwork because it's the right thing to do, and it's going to allow us to execute in a much lower friction way. Related to that, I think making the things that are really truly dangerous or things you just simply don't want to have happen, make those harder. But the good behavior, the things that you want to happen regularly, remove as much friction as possible, make the processes as simple as possible, automate as much as you possibly can. And then you've got this foundation to be able to scale. And you can't, you resist the temptation to create a monster as you're scaling, because it is necessary to put processes in place when you go from being able to get everybody in a room to a bunch of global offices and different cultures. But doing it with that innovation and startup mindset in mind is a way to help create some nice natural tension and enable the ability to scale in an innovative way.
I love that. Makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people will get, a lot of insights from that they like to overcomplicate things and put too many processes in place, but keeping it real simple. So in terms of healthcare technology and the sales and marketing side, because health tech, selling into healthcare is definitely a lot different to some other industries. Principles are still the same, but there's a lot of nuances. When it comes to sales and marketing, I guess, how do you approach it when it comes to health tech? I know that's quite a broad question.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a strong belief in the sales and marketing flywheel. It's something that I first heard from HubSpot, but it very much relates to the business decisions that we made at Epic, brought some of these things into Orion, into Volpara, into Lunit. And the idea is, instead of hiring professional salespeople who are going to do a high pressure sale, who are living and dying by the quarter, which is very common. People get a person with a Rolodex, they go call all their buddies, they do some golfing, they pour some bourbon, they try to ink some deals, they leave a trail of dead bodies and move on to their next job in 24 months. So instead of that approach, which is common in healthcare, we put together at Volpara a career pathways program where we brought people in, and I actually put an ad out and I said, I'm looking for sales unsales people. And by that I mean, I actually wrote, are you a person whose parents got irritated with you because you wouldn't give up? You can talk people into anything. Maybe you haven't done sales before, but you're interested, you're energetic, you're ambitious, and you're building a career. And maybe you don't have a ton of experience in healthcare or technology, or you know healthcare but not tech, or you know tech but not healthcare. And you're interested in a career that you can build where in the end you can make a lot of money. But we're going to bring you into a pathway where first you engage with customers on implementation and you just learn, how does the software work? How do you get it working with customers? How do you train customers? You start kind of at a foundation level. Then you move to customer success. So you're working with customers who are already live, you're forming relationships, you're collecting stories and credibility. And then you move into a sales role, and you're in a sales role with instant credibility because you've got this is what this customer did, and they're very much like you. Or one of my favorite jokes is, what's the difference between a software salesperson and a used car salesperson? It's the used car salesperson. They know they're lying. And so
Yes.
in software and in healthcare software, you often have people who actually don't really understand what they're selling. And so we can differentiate ourselves by bringing people in who really understand the customer's world, and we've invested in building that understanding. And then they'll work their butts off for you because they are building their career. They're doing important, cool stuff. They're connected with the mission. So they're going to sell circles around that, professional person who cycles job to job to job because they come in with this instant unsales sales credibility. That only works if you've got the flywheel in place, and that flywheel means that you do a great job with your customers. The customers are happy with every engagement with you, including implementation, including technical support. You've got a customer success infrastructure where you're doing net promoters. You've got outreach. You've got educational programs. You've got value adds, ideally delivered in a sassy kind of way that customers enjoy, that they find fun. So customers are feeling, oh, this is a vendor we like. They care about us. They reach out to us. There's cool things about them. And then marketing catches the smiles. They catch the customers. They help customers be able to actually promote their successes because their successes are our successes. So we've got our own podcasts, we've got our own training where customers are sharing, this is what's awesome. And we might be a sliver of it, and it might be a whole bunch of other stuff, but we enjoy our sliver, we're providing value. And then that material then feeds into the sales process. We've got positive references, we've got prospective customers who can see themselves in our current customers. They can see what success looks like. And then we've got people who are trained to be able to speak that language. So to me, in healthcare technology, where the sales cycles can be long, where you've got coaches, you've got champions, you've got technical people who can make or break a sale, you've got key decision makers who may not understand the detailed technical workflows and things, you've got radiologists or orthopods who are very unique personalities. You've got CFO wanting to know what the ROI is. You've got AI, which people either love, hate, or invariably at least need to figure out, can I trust it? When you've got all of these different elements, you need somebody who can safely navigate you and take the customer by the hand all the way through the journey from first call until happy customer who's sharing their experiences with others. So that, to me, is the most effective way to successfully sell and outsell your competition in healthcare technology.
I love that. That's amazing. I mean, there's so many different threads that we could pull on there, but I think that, yeah, that flywheel effect, you just, yeah, you're talking exactly what I love to think about. So, I mean, you've got to have all those pieces together, and it's not just about putting in, you know, a really skilled salesperson without the other parts of the flywheel in place, like
Yes.
the case studies, the customer success, the happiness, and that feeds the salesperson's confidence, and it's a self-repeating cycle.
Yep.
So I love that. Obviously, on Luna and Volpara, I see that case studies and customer success is a big part of it, and it acts as a lead magnet, which I could see. So I love that aspect. A lot of companies don't do that, but it goes to show it's a key to success, and you need to be doing it. If you don't have it, it's not the best sign. So
And
in
it
terms
takes
of
an investment. You know, when I came in
yeah,
as the CEO of Volpara, one of the first things we did was double down on customer success and get that infrastructure in place. We created a customer community, which we call the Volpara Hive, with all kinds of horrible jokes about how things are buzzing. And, you know, honestly, customers love it. And that was the fuel that then supported us growing our revenue 70+% in the course of just a couple years.
70%. So in terms of that, obviously that flywheel effect, is that something that you implement as soon as you come in to a new company? Is that what your immediate priority is?
Yep. Absolutely.
Awesome.
It also fits again to my do good, have fun, make money. I feel like, you know, those drive me as a person. So do good, connecting with the mission. I care about healthcare. I care about the customer's experience because they're doing good and I'm part of it. I can help them do good better. Have
Exactly.
fun. Having fun with customers is part of that culture and part of what draws them into being able to engage with us and share those stories and want to share their experience. And so you have to actually have positive touch points with your customers to get that flywheel spinning. And then, of course, when the flywheel's spinning well, you're making money. So
Like,
this is like the business embodiment of that mission that I learned from Epic that really drives a lot of the decisions I make in my life personally.
amazing, amazing. So you obviously come across as a very high energy person, and then that obviously translates into the company's success. Because business and outputs is often pretty much, well, it is dictated by your personal inputs, and you as a person. So I often find that, you know, business is a personal journey, so you must grow for the business to grow. I guess personally, what have been some of those, I guess, is there any principles or things that you do day in, day out to maintain that high energy and I guess function at your best?
Oh, yeah. Well, being a person who travels across lots and lots of different time zones, I do find that you have to fill your own cup first. So you have to be careful to eat healthy, exercise, create space for sleeping, although my team will tell you they think I never sleep. I do sleep sometimes, but you know, I do feel like taking care of yourself physically is extremely important to be able to maintain that energy. I do find too, like my son was saying to me, you know, Mom, whatever you do, it's so easy for you. Everything always works out. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's no easier for me than for anyone else. I have certain days where I feel like, you know, I completely suck. Other days I feel like I'm on top of the world, and lots of mundane, boring stuff in between. But to me, the days that really suck, which happen to all of us, our learning experience. When I look back at the times that were toughest in my career, those were the times I was learning the most. So when I have a tough day, I always look at that as think, number one, just get through this. But number two, looking back, all right, what was I able to learn through that? What was it that, sometimes it's really understanding, like I had a shift from do what is most important, which, kind of conventional wisdom. If you're overloaded, for example, I'll pick what's most important, do the Covey quadrants and things. I had a big mental shift. Nah, you need to do what you can uniquely do. What can you do better and more than anyone else? And there can be very important things that you're still delegating to other people because they've got good capabilities and they should be able to do it as well as you or better. Like that kind of a learning and shift came from a point where I'm like, damn, I'm working 16 hours a day and it's nutty and I can't keep doing this. And I'm like, I had lots and lots and lots of important stuff. And so I had to go to a next level, which was, all right, that, I look back, I'm like, that was great. That helped me level up to the next thing. So to me, always having that learning mindset so that the inevitable crappy days, which we all have, are days that I can look back as growth days instead of poor me, my life sucked days.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think people talk about their crap days as much. They like to appear as if they're always on top of the world. So makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
You look at social media and people only post the days where their like hair is good, their makeup's good, and they're happy, and nobody posts the I feel like crap on an utter failure day, Or it's rare, especially for leaders. And I actually will never forget. I had a day at Epic years ago, and I was rapidly promoted and just a person who was very high profile in the company. And I had a really crap day. And I went in the bathroom and I was sobbing, absolutely sobbing. And I had this belief at that point that I need to be like Superman or Superwoman, never let him see crack. And I would never dream of telling anybody I'm having a shit day, and I would never cry in front of anybody. And a person walked in and saw the tears and whatever. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, good." And I'm like, "Oh, good?" And she goes, "You're a human." And the funniest thing is that my relationship with that person improved massively that day. And I didn't have to tell her I was having a shit day. It was quite obvious. And she saw me be absolutely as professional and absolutely she never sleeps and all of that. But that little bit of humanity for her to feel like, oh my gosh, yeah, even the people that are in these levels all still have crap days. Allowing that little bit of humanity was another learning experience for me. So I've shared with my senior team occasionally, look, I'm having a real crap week. And I'm not going to tell you what's going on, my kid's doing this and whatever it is. I'm not one of those sort of people. I kind of keep church and state separate. But being able to actually, when somebody says, how are you, say, you know what? I'm kind of shit today. I'll be fine tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was also another one of those kind of learnings, because the reality is no matter what level we're in a company, we're all human. And that's the point that we can connect. Humor is a great way, but a little appropriate vulnerability can go a long way as well. Although
Totally.
I prefer the humor one. Crack a joke, especially if you're having a shit
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I love to implement that myself and, joke around, and because you always look at the corporate world and from the outside and you think, oh, they're super professional, you must act a certain way, and your sales and marketing, the way you speak, but we're all human, right? It's like
Yeah.
we're all human. So
Exactly. And professional can sometimes be deathly boring.
yeah,
Deathly boring. I was
completely.
in being on the ASX, I went to a conference and I sat in the back and I watched the two presenters before I was up to present. And the one before me was harder to hear because of the person in front of me snoring. And so it's kind of funny because they were all quite professional and they had all of the same kind of charts and graphs and financial this and financial that, and here's our TAM, and all the same acronyms. And so I went up, grabbed the microphone, and I said, "All right, I'm here to talk about tits." And everybody went, "Of course, it's breast cancer prevention." Yeah,
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
absolutely talking about breasts. But I'm like, all right, people are awake now. Let's like
Yeah.
make this a little bit more fun. And I had my professional presentation I was going to do. I literally threw it and decided, no,
Wow.
I'm just going to have fun because it can't get any
Yeah.
worse than a bunch of people snoozing in the seats. And so, you might think I'm professional, you might think I'm unprofessional. I know my stuff, and I'm going to deliver this in a way that minimally you're going to not feel like that was the most boring half an hour that I sat through. So,
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So in terms of, I guess, the next steps in your journey, I know we talked about it briefly before the podcast, but are you able to share some information on what's next for you?
yep. So I'm wrapping up my time as Volpara's CEO and Lunit CBO, and I'll be moving on to be the Chief Executive Officer of and Managing Director of Mach7 Technologies. So it's an ASX listed company that provides vendor neutral archive, a radiology viewing workstation, a unified place to see all the different kinds of radiology images, PACS functionality. So still in the health technology world, but I'm really looking forward to engaging with my team and officially taking that role on July 1st.
Amazing, amazing. We're looking forward to seeing the success there. And I guess in terms of wrapping up the podcast now, if there's one piece of advice that you could give to your younger self, it could be at any stage of the journey. If you could give one piece of advice, what would that be?
Wow. To my younger self. It's funny. I was thinking about this yesterday. There's that book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all small stuff, right? And I have mixed feelings about that book because at one level, I like that it gives you perspective and that you have to sometimes think about your entire life. Like I've done this with my kids where I look at maybe a big table and we divide it into, here's 50 and here's 25. And if your lifespan is roughly 100 years, this is how far you are. And you've got this whole life ahead of you. And will these things matter in a year or two? And so there's a part of me that loves the perspective that it brings. But the other major learning I've had, though, is that details matter. And the small stuff actually can be what differentiates you from someone else. So in an age where sometimes people are careless about simple things like spelling and grammar, and how you come across to other people, am I being respectful? First impressions, that so many of the actual things that look small in the moment in aggregate can become big. So to me, the advice that I would give myself as a younger self is to strike the right balance and figure out, can you hold yourself to a high level of competence and be into the details, but then learn what are the things that you need to actually just drop and decide, grand scheme of things, this actually doesn't matter. And I think there is a balance where it's not one, it's not the other. And I think my earlier self didn't have a lot of perspective, cared a lot about competence and details, but was less able to just like let go of something and decide, you know what, across all of this, that thing isn't going to matter. So maybe that's my advice to others, is figure out the right
Amazing.
balance.
Amazing, Terry. And if people want to get in touch with you and have a conversation or find out a little bit more about what your company does, and where can they find you?
You can go to www.lunit.io for information about Lunit and RAI, to www.volparahealth.com, VOLPARAHEALTH.com. And I'm Teri Thomas on LinkedIn, and if you do Teri with Volpara or Teri with Lunit, I'm sure you'll find the right Teri Thomas. Versus the million other Teri Thomases in the world, although I'm Teri with one R.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Terry. Really appreciate it.
You are welcome. It was fun.